Yeah, so this is the DB podcast, this is the Dark Podcast. When you gaze into the abyss gazes back into you, and within the darkness shines light. Alright, read the screen, okay? Alright, so Stranger Things, the reason why they're using these offsprings for psychological experiments is because just like the military, they're trying to weaponize these psychological abilities that even special ed kids have, and it's even stronger because they're not attached to what more refer to as their physical forms. Neither do they even realize they're incarnated. In some cases, they don't even pay attention to it, which is why they're not moving. It's not because they can't. It's because they don't fucking care. They don't give a fuck to. They're not impaired. They're just in a deeper state of consciousness. Okay, so just like 11, who is a high functioning, which is why she talks the way she does, she acts the way she does in the cinema. Stranger Things is because she's fucking in the spectrum. That's obvious. That's actually pretty obvious. I'm not gonna lie. Even her mom, once again, she was in the spectrum. So when she was doing experiments in a fucking hydraulic chamber with salt is crystals. Salt is a form of crystal. So those crystals were able to activate the deeper. It was basically allowed the spirit to create enough of a strong, deeper electrical charge which would automatically shift one state of mind or self-awareness into a deeper state of self-awareness. And that deeper state of self-awareness would allow them to activate abilities within the mind, and that would be referred to as psychological abilities or psychic abilities. And those psychic abilities can be activated whether through manipulation of experiments or through organic means like weed, meditation, and DMT and mushrooms and shit, like in psychedelics. Psychedelics is how they fucking did that shit. So a lot of people in the streets, in the hood and shit, they do psychedelics. Boom. Activated psychic abilities. Homeless people, they do fucking drugs. I mean, well, it's basically psychedelic drugs, and even organic forms like weed and shit, and tobacco and fucking cannabis. Which is the same thing, and they were doing crack and cocaine. That's what that was about. They needed motherfuckers to be experimented on. So they was just like, we need to snatch these motherfuckers up to see what's going on inside their head. And whenever they did crack and shit, they was in a whole different dimension. They was like, what the fuck? What's going on? Where is there so much radioactivity here? There you go. Mortals are not radioactive as deeply as copper-colored folk. The immortal gods reincarnated. So they're like gods and goddesses and mourners and titans, yeah, that aren't fallen. It's the divine ones, okay, that are reincarnated. So they like, hold on. Pass them the mic. Somebody over here is singing. Like, hold on, hey, you wanna talk your shit? Okay, cool, babe. And then that's how they found out about that. I mean, that's how they basically manipulated orchestrated that situation to create experiments so even if your mom and daddy, your paternal portalers and your maternal portalers got fucked up in the 80s and the 70s because of crack shit, their kids were activated because it was inside the bloodstream. So now you got crack babies, and crack babies turn out to be like having abilities activated and shit too, off the rip, but it was forced though. So that's where you get the conscious areas. Now you got hippies and shit, and now you got motherfuckers running around doing psychedelics and fucking shrooms and shit. That's it's the same thing. And then orphans are the descendants of the ones that got either offed, got manipulated, being experimented on, or they're like in a psych ward somewhere. So, and the orphans don't even realize that yet. And even if they do, they're in the state of survival. So even if they gave a fuck, it's not like they're going to do anything about it. That's how they want them to feel, basically. That's not true, but that's how they want them to feel. That's how they feel about them. So they allow them to get trafficked, which is basically sold off to the highest bidder, which is remnants of chattel slavery, and basically Black Friday, that's what that was about, stuff like that. They would always sell so-called brothers and sisters on the Friday because they're not gonna sell you before church. They gonna let you pray before you get mutilated, raped, traumatized. And so that trauma mixed with this psychological response of the psychological experiments using the psychedelics as well as the salt chamber that you seen the L.A.W that was in, where she was in that water tube with a lot of salt in it. That would activate psychological abilities, but it would keep the mind easily manipulated to the point where even if the one with the psychological abilities activates, they can still be abused constantly without any form of self-awareness as to why of what's actually occurring within their vessels, because they're having a visual reaction. Even though their nervous system is highly connected with one another, like their neurons are firing like ape shit. Yeah. What's happening is that they're so dysregulated that they don't even have the cognitive awareness to kind of like, they're not even aware of themselves, their own self-awareness, to the point where they're like, fuck this, I'm not going to do it anymore. Until they leave that environment. That's why they want them inside of an experimentation facility or psych ward, a prison, military, so that they can monitor their behavior, which is an indication of their psychological state of mind. That way that they can utilize it and figure out how to manipulate them so that they don't actually retaliate. If they do retaliate, well, they got motherfuckers who are still being used for the experiment. They'll use them to fuck them up. Anyways, if that works. But it doesn't usually work. Even if they try, like they will try it, it doesn't mean it'll work though. Anyways, other so-called nations are doing the same things where they're using orphans and stuff, and they're doing military experiments with them, even before they get into the military, even before they're enlisted in the military. They're monitoring them within the same realms and dimensions, like the same fourth dimension as these special ed and these gifted and talented. They're all the same program, the Gateway program, Stargate program, breeding program. They did all that shit to not only create these test tube babies, but these crack babies. They did it with the they did it, bro. They did that shit, and then they went out of their way to orchestrate situations where these offsprings would want to join a coven, a cult, the Kabbalah, or they could stay in the fucking religious groups, and that's still a coven. That's still a cult. I mean, a fraternity of fraternities. Like in colleges, they do fucking witchcraft and shit, or they try to, at least. They try to do what I was referring to as destructive magic, in the previous episodes, manipulation basically. Or they can just do the military, GOV, 3-letter agency. They'll get recruited there easily because they want motherfuckers in that shit to do the psychological warfare for them, so that way that they continue to manipulate the masses of clones that they've created, and synthetics and artificials included, and keep the NPCs in check. Because if they don't keep them in check, like, who the fuck is supposed to pretend so that people can, how are they gonna manipulate without chess pieces checkers pieces in the checkers board, because they're trying to win some shit. They think they're winning a war. They're not gonna get shit if they win. They're not gonna get shit if they lose, because winning and losing doesn't exist, number one. But number two, we're not offering anything, but we're also not losing anything by fucking them up. But that's not how they feel, because they don't think. Why? Don't have souls. Don't use their spirits.